Welcome into today's edition of Just the Truth. Glad to have you join me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studio. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. A lot to cover today. On Take Two, House Republicans impeach Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas yesterday, reversing their failed attempt on this extraordinary move last week, setting up a showdown in the Democrat-controlled Senate. We have all the details for you. A newly surfaced document allegedly helps prove that Hunter Biden was, in fact, working with Chinese state-linked CEFC China Energy while his dad was still vice president, as suspected by Republicans leading the impeachment inquiry into the corruption by our now president. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin was released from the hospital yesterday after being treated for a bladder issue. Former President Donald Trump remains a huge favorite to defeat former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley in the Palmetto State, according to a new poll released this week. And has Taylor Swift introduced some Hollywood drama to the NFL? Former star NFL receiver Brandon Marshall claimed on his podcast this week that Taylor Swift had Kanye West kicked out of the Super Bowl. Happy Valentine's Day. Glad to have you in on this special day. And if you forgot, you better run out and grab a Valentine's card right now.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
On our guest line this morning, Senator Tim Scott.
Thank you for listening to one of the best radio shows. Joey, God bless your leadership.
Joey, congratulations on your new show.
I just wanted to let you know that I always appreciate your perspective and your common sense approach to the issues.
You know what? If people like you keep telling us the truth, believe me, we're paying close attention.
Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
House Republicans impeached Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas yesterday, reversing their attempt in a vote last week where they came up just short, and they barely made it yesterday. The final vote, 214 to 213. It passed two articles of impeachment against President Joe Biden's chief border enforcement officer on charges of willful and systemic refusal to comply with federal immigration law and lying to Congress about the border being secure. Mayorkas is the only the second cabinet official to be impeached after Secretary of War William Belknap, who resigned in 1876 from President Ulysses Grant's administration hours before the House formally charged him with corruption. Belknap was later acquitted by the Senate, an outcome that is probably likely with Mayorkas, given that the political vulnerable Senate Democrats like John Tester, Montana, have dismissed the House's impeachment push as, quote, political games. But some Republicans in the Senate, which puts individuals on trial if they are impeached or charged by the House, are vowing to make the case for removal nonetheless. A Senate GOP aide told the New York Post there will absolutely be many who believe his case merits removal from office and will vote accordingly. Since Democrats control the chamber, however, it's basically certain that the vote will fail if Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer allows it to happen in the first place. This staffer speculated there's never been in American history an impeachment where the Senate has refused to vote on the matter. If Schumer kills it procedurally without a vote, it would be unprecedented. It would not surprise me, though, if Chuck Schumer does try to stop a vote. In a statement following the vote, Department of Homeland Security spokesperson Mia Ehrenberg responded that, quote, House Republicans will be remembered by history for trampling on the Constitution for political gain rather than working to solve the serious challenges at our border. Does it just drive you insane when you hear statements like that rather than working to fix what's wrong at our border, that they go off on these political tangents, because that's basically what House Republicans are being charged with? When Democrats know, and Mayorkas knows, I think the most serious charge of the two is where he is lying to Congress about the border being secure, because he's lying to the entire nation. He knows the border's not secure. No way can you see millions of people come into our country and claim that we have a secure border. But yet they talk about all of these challenges and all of these things that the Republicans need to get on board with and help Joe Biden fix the problem. When we know, and if you missed Monday, I filled in for Mike Gallagher on the Mike Gallagher show. Go to MikeOnline.com, and I talked about this. And there's a video segment. You can actually find it on my YouTube page. Just go to YouTube, search for Joey Hudson, then scroll down to guest host Mike Gallagher. And you'll find a segment that I did talking about the fact that Mayorkas and the Biden administration, the border was not broken when the Biden administration took over. Donald Trump had pretty much fixed the border. So if it was working when Trump left and it's not working now, who broke it? Who's responsible? You should, when you have a minute, listen to that segment from earlier this week. Again, just go to YouTube, search for Joey Hudson, find my channel, and scroll down. You'll be able to find it. House Speaker Mike Johnson has already named 11 GOP impeachment managers to make the case for conviction before the Senate. Because here's how this works. So the House makes the charges. They're sort of like the DA, and they present to the grand jury, which is the entire House, and they vote on the charges. Then they send it over to the Senate, where the Senate serves as the judges. They'll hear the testimony. They'll hear. They'll preside over the trial, and then they'll ultimately, it'll be like a 50 vote, 50 judges voting on whether or not to convict. These House managers that the Speaker appointed will be like the prosecutors. They'll be pleading the case of the House. That will consist of House Homeland Security Committee Chairman Mark Green. He's from Tennessee, Republican from Tennessee. Michael Guest, Michael McCall, August Pfluger, Clay Higgins, Ben Klein, Andy Biggs, Andrew Garbarino, Harriet Hagman, Laurel Lee, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, who actually authored the resolution. Johnson said in a statement following the vote, for nearly a year, the House Homeland Security Committee has taken a careful, methodical approach to this investigation, and the results are clear. From his first day in office, Secretary Mayorkas has willfully and consistently refused to comply with federal immigration laws, fueling the worst border catastrophe in American history. We still had 3 Republicans holding out. Ken Buck of Colorado, Tom McClintock of California, and Mike Gallagher, the other Mike Gallagher, not the talk show host Mike Gallagher, and people have gotten that confused a bit. They opposed the resolution again this week. They had voted against it last week. But no other GOP lawmakers joined them on the vote this week. The first impeachment attempt failed because of the surprise appearance of Representative Al Green, who had been recovering from intestinal surgery, but rolled onto the floor minutes before the vote in a wheelchair to vote no. And it's quite amazing. And I've heard these stories in the past. It's quite amazing what they will do. You can have a member of the House or a member of the Senate literally almost on their deathbed. And one way or the other, if they need to vote, they'll get them to Washington. We saw the return this week of Majority Leader Steve Scalise, who was absent last week. Representative Scalise of Louisiana had been absent while he was receiving stem cell treatments for blood cancer. Scalise told Fox News you can only do so much by phone, mentioning an unexpected snowstorm that complicated travel into the Northeast. A couple of really bad areas up there from Washington, D.C. up into New York, New Hampshire, Maine, through there. Some heavy snow this week. The Scalise said you always talk to the whip, and he keeps track of whose planes are delayed and all that kind of stuff. They're counting the votes, and they're waiting to time the votes when they can get their members into the chamber. The Department of Homeland Security released a memo yesterday denouncing the GOP's impeachment stunt, as they called it. Actually, Representative Buck called it a stunt as well, referencing other remarks that McClintock and Gallagher made in opposition. The memo also cited Republican senators like Mitt Romney and James Langford, who echoed those criticisms and declared the resolution dead on arrival in the upper chamber. Now, why would two Republican senators, I mean, we kind of know Mitt Romney, but why would they declare something like this dead on arrival? Why would they be defending Joe Biden's secretary, who has allowed these millions of people to come into our state, who allowed people? I'm sure many of them have ended up in Utah, where Romney's from. I'm sure many have ended up in Oklahoma, where Senator Langford's from. Representative Buck and McClintock had made their conference aware of their opposition well before both votes, arguing that Mayorkas' conduct had not risen to the level of high crimes and misdemeanors, which is outlined as the basis for impeachment in the Constitution. Representative Gallagher did likewise, who, by the way, has announced that he will not be seeking re-election. Gallagher wrote before noting that GOP lawmakers had voted against single-party impeachments of former President Donald Trump in 2019-2021. He said impeachment not only would fail to resolve Mr. Biden's border crisis, but would also set a dangerous new precedent that would be used against future Republican administrations. He said the person chiefly responsible for the chaos and devastation that has unfolded at the border is Mr. Biden, not Mr. Mayorkas. If Mr. Mayorkas was removed, his replacements would also implement Mr. Biden's disastrous border policies. If anything, impeaching Mayorkas would absolve Mr. Biden of blame for his own policies. That was Representative Gallagher's argument. The DHS memo pointed to statements of opposition by federal officials in the George W. Bush administration and the assessment of 25 legal scholars that, as a matter of constitutional law, say that the impeachment was or is utterly unjustified. The House impeachment bill, Resolution 863, alleges that Mayorkas failed to enforce the Immigration and Nationality Act of 1952 and the Secure Fence Act of 2006 while lying in testimony to Congress about having, quote, operational control of the border. You know, Mayorkas still, to this day, to my knowledge, has not admitted that we don't have a secure border. He still says the border is secure. After releasing a September 2021 memo that watered down rules for detaining and expelling migrants, Mayorkas allowed his department to institute a de facto catch and release policy for millions of illegal border crossers, according to the resolution. That has led to a backlog of more than 3 million cases of asylum seekers in the U.S. Since Biden took office, more than 8.5 million illegals have been apprehended by U.S. Customs and Border Protection, with 7 million of those encounters occurring on the southern border. Another 1.8 million known gotaways have evaded arrest when coming into the country. The Senate had briefly considered a bipartisan package to address what they say was border enforcement issues, but was killed under pressure from the GOP border the day after the House had failed its first impeachment vote. 864-477-5639 is the Furman Ford text line. Love to get your comments today. You can leave me a voice message, and emails are welcome. Joey@joeyhudson.com. So a newly surfaced document allegedly helps prove Hunter Biden was working with Chinese state-linked CEFC China Energy while his dad was actually still vice president, not after he had left office, as we have suspected. Republicans leading the impeachment inquiry released some additional details from testimony that was held earlier. Before we get into that, and you're going to want to hear this, because it really, if you had any doubt before as to whether or not Joe Biden and Hunter Biden that they had already started their relationship with China before, while he was vice president, and that they even had the relationship at all. When you hear some of this, there'll be no doubt. But first, let me talk with you about PhD weight loss and nutrition. If you're wanting to lose weight, like I did over 3 years ago now, I met Dr. Ashley Lucas with PhD weight loss and nutrition. Because of her program and the great team they have at PhD weight loss and nutrition in the Greenville office, I was able to lose 30 pounds pretty quickly within a few months. Over 3 years later, I've been able to maintain that weight. And that's the key to the success of PhD weight loss and nutrition. There are also a lot of what we call non-scale victories as well. That'll just make life better. You'll be able to do things that you haven't been able to do in the past when you lose all that excess weight. You'll be in a better mood. You'll have more energy. You'll be able to focus and think better. You'll sleep better. And sleep's important. You forget about the effect that excess weight can have on your sleep. There are a lot of other non-scale victories that you'll experience as well. And I want you to experience them. I want you to have your own journey. Call today, 864-252-4925. 864-252-4925. If you didn't get that, hit pause. That's what I love about the podcast. Hit pause, get a pen and pencil and piece of paper, and play it again. 864-252-4925. You can also go online to myphdweightloss.com. PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition, the official partner of the Clemson Tigers. So Joe Biden has repeatedly claimed that his family never got money from China, despite his own alleged direct involvement in 2 different Chinese government-backed ventures. How many times have we talked about this? How many times have we had this conversation? The latest email says, we anticipate working together on a number of opportunities in the U.S. and abroad. This was dated March 22nd, 2016. It surfaced this week and was addressed to CEFC Executive Director Zhijun Zhang on Hunter's letterhead about 10 months before Joe Biden left office as vice president. So not only do we know that they shook down the Chinese, but it's even worse that they didn't let him get out of office yet. He was still vice president. The draft letter to Mr. Zhang, which was distributed among Hunter and his partners, Rob Walker and James Gilliar, as an email attachment, said, I believe we have presented a collection of projects that parallel the interest of you and your team, and we look forward to discussing them in detail. As we await your next visit to the United States, please continue to coordinate all matters with my confidant and trusted advisor, James Gilliar. Walker provided the document to the House impeachment inquiry ahead of his January 26th closed-door deposition just a couple months back. It also backed up some of what the letter suggests with other alleged evidence. The email was published yesterday as part of his interview's transcript. Now, in fairness, they make a point to say it's unclear as to whether or not the letter was actually delivered, but it was circulated among Hunter and his business associates. It indicates that an assistant to Hunter was to dispatch the letter to the Chinese. Joe and Hunter Biden have not specifically confirmed or denied the start date of a CEFC relationship, but Hunter is expected to be grilled on the details during his own deposition that is expected to take place later this month. On the hot seat during a closed-door session of impeachment probe yesterday also was his former associate, Tony Bobulinski. He's one of the Republicans' best hopes and America's best hopes of confirming the details about the president's ties to relatives of this Chinese government-linked relationship. Joe Biden has said that in addition to his family never getting money from China, that he had no interactions with his relatives' business associates, and that Hunter's abandoned laptop was Russian disinformation, claims which, of course, have been disproven. I guess this is when that failing memory comes in handy, doesn't it? When Joe Biden doesn't remember any of this. Biden, as vice president, interacted with Hunter and his brother, James Biden, some of their business associates from Russia, Mexico, Kazakhstan, and Ukraine, and had coffee in 2013, according to records, with the CEO of an earlier Chinese state-backed Hunter Biden venture. Again, all of this is coming from Hunter's laptop, photos, witnesses' statements. In a court filing yesterday, the Justice Department said that it provided Hunter's legal team in a gun case with a complete and identical copy of the infamous laptop retrieved by the FBI in 2019 from the Delaware repair shop and first reported by the Post. And people claimed that it was disinformation. I need to go back and dig up. I interviewed the owner of that Delaware repair shop on the Morning Answer a couple years ago. I need to go back and dig that up. That'd be a good best of interview, wouldn't it? Hunter's representatives and Democrats have yet to use the information from Hunter's laptop to support their claims that some of the things that have been alleged that he was involved in did not. Now, they have the same information that Republicans who are making the allegations have, but they don't want to use it to try to defend themselves. You know why? Because they know there's no defense there. In his congressional testimony, Mr. Walker broadly defended the president from allegations of wrongdoing while also firming up some of the details, though, including saying that the origins of the Hunter Biden CEFC relationship dated as early as 2015. I wonder if he forgot that Joe Biden was still vice president then. An investigator asked Mr. Walker in reference to a different document. He said, it's fair to say that by February of 2016, James Gilliar and Hunter Biden had begun pursuing business with CEFC. Walker replied, that is correct. The transcript shows that Walker added, I do remember Zhang being in D.C. He was in D.C. probably 3 or maybe 4 times. Walker also told investigators that Joe Biden, weeks after leaving office as vice president, met with his son's CEFC partners, including Chairman Yi Jiabing. Yi Jiabing, is that right? These Chinese names are hard to pronounce. Yi Jiabing at the Four Seasons Hotel in D.C. Joe Biden stopped by the meeting shortly before the Biden family received an initial transfer of $1 million from, guess who? CEFC. The $1 million payoff to the Biden family, which was divided between Hunter Biden, his uncle James Biden, and his sister-in-law Hallie Biden, according to bank records, was roughly a third of a $3 million transfer from a corporate subsidy to Walker, who kept about a third and sent a third to Gilliar. Gilliar insisted that the $3 million payday had nothing to do with Joe Biden's stop-in at the D.C. hotel and that it was, in fact, payment for services provided during Biden's vice presidency. The investigator asked, the $3 million payment then was payment for the success that you had previously shown them. Do I have that right? Walker said, from the opportunities that we had shown them, yes. Now again, these were all opportunities because of Hunter Biden. The CEFC venture fueled one of the most explosive corruption allegations against Biden in 2020, when some of the communications appeared to show that Democrat nominee, he was getting a cut from the Chinese government-linked partnership. Remember the email from Gilliar in 2017 where it talks about the big guy and the 10% cut? And that will be held by H. Well, we know the big guy is Joe Biden, and that the 10% cut is going to be held by H, who is Hunter. It doesn't take a nuclear scientist to figure that out, does it? An October 2017 email also named Joe Biden as a participant in a call about CEFC's attempt to purchase U.S. natural gas. Republicans say that the president was a central figure in this very lucrative relationship. A threatening July 2017 WhatsApp message from Hunter Biden. Remember this? Remember the text where Hunter says, "I'm sitting here with my father, and we'd like to understand why the commitment made has not been fulfilled." Within 10 days of that message, CEFC transferred $5.1 million to bank accounts linked to Hunter and James Biden. Again, this was documented by bank records, by the Republican-led Senate committee investigating this. The IRS whistleblowers say that they were blocked by the Justice Department, the Biden Justice Department, by the way, from getting cell phone geolocation data that could have proven that Hunter and Joe Biden were indeed together, but photos from Hunter's laptop showed that he was indeed at his father's home at the time of the text message. Walker's testimony filled in some of the broader timeline questions as well, including the origins of the relationship. Some additional email records that Walker produced showed that Hunter Biden was copied on preparations for a February 2016 CEFC board meeting in Beijing, which Gilliar was due to attend. Again, February 2016. The election was November 2016 when Donald Trump was elected president. And a February 23rd, 2016, again, prior to the election, Joe Biden is still vice president. Gilliar wrote, "It has been made clear to me that CEFC wishes to engage in further business relations with our group, and we will present a few projects to them." Wouldn't you love to know what those projects look like? And if there were even any projects other than buying access to the vice president? Hunter Biden and the president's brother, James Biden, ultimately received more than $7 million in 2017 and 2018. $7 million from the Chinese. An American partner in a proposed CEFC joint venture, Bubba Linsky, alleged in 2020 that he twice discussed the plans with Joe Biden in the spring of 2017. Bubba Linsky, of course, was just totally dismissed by the Bidens as not really knowing what he was talking about. Walker told investigators that the Chinese seemed to be impressed by Hunter's surname. The House prober, a member of the House committee, asked, "Why use Hunter Biden to send the letter instead of Rob Walker or James Gilliar, especially if James Gilliar had the original relationship?" Walker replied, "Hunter is our relationship, was. Everybody had different roles. He was the one that I imagine Mr. Zhang would expect to come from. It is because he was the son of the vice president at the time," the member of Congress asked. "Well, I think in Zhang's eyes that I worked for Hunter and that James worked for us and for Hunter, and so that would be he was viewed as the principal of this organization and the vice president's son. And that's because of his last name?" he was asked. "I can't answer for Zhang, but sure, he had an interesting last name that would probably get people in the door," Walker replied, who said that his relationship with Hunter later soured over a $50,000 personal loan that he made to the first son that was never repaid. Moral of that story is don't loan Hunter Biden any money. 864-477-5639. Love to get your comments on the Furman Ford text line. Leave a quick voice message, and emails welcome to joey@joeyhudson.com. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin was released from the hospital yesterday after being treated for what was described as a bladder issue. Austin was admitted to Walter Reed Medical Center on Sunday with some discomfort and concern from a bladder issue related to his December 2023 prostate cancer surgery, according to a statement from doctors at the hospital. He transferred duties to Deputy Defense Secretary Kathleen Hicks while he was treated in the critical care unit, where doctors said a, quote, diagnostic evaluation identified the cause of his bladder issue. This was corrected with non-surgical procedures on Monday, according to the statement. Austin is due to testify before Congress after initial secrecy surrounding his January hospitalization due to complications from the prostate cancer treatment. He has been criticized by lawmakers from both parties that he was basically being treated and was AWOL from his duties and did not even tell the president. Per a Defense Department statement, on the advice of his doctor, Secretary Austin will recuperate and perform his duties remotely from home for a period before returning to work at the Pentagon later this week. He's scheduled to deliver opening remarks today at a virtual meeting of defense officials from nearly 50 nations to discuss Russia's war on Ukraine. Things are looking up, or continuing to look up, for former President Donald Trump. He remains to have a huge lead against former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley in the Palmetto State, according to a new poll. I'll give you those details in just a moment. Are you looking for a new vehicle? Then look no further than Furman Ford in Lawrence. It's never been more important to support locally run businesses owned by people who live here in in our community. Furman Ford is one of those. Think about it. Think about the big corporations. We're just talking about these Chinese corporations and big business and how they dominate some areas. That's why we want to support locally owned businesses like Furman Ford. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line with every single transaction. They'll help you navigate some of the great deals they have on a good selection of pre-owned vehicles. They have a good selection of new vehicles. And if you need service on a vehicle, they can help you with that as well. And you're not going to have to wait weeks or months. You do not have had to purchase a vehicle, and it does not have to be a Ford. They service all makes and models. Furman Ford. Find them online at FurmanFord.com, FurmanFord.com. CBS News YouGov poll released yesterday shows that President Donald Trump is favored by 65% of South Carolinians likely to vote in the state's GOP primary in just a couple of weeks, while former Governor Haley is the choice of just 30% of voters. Trump voters seem less willing to change their vote, with only 13% saying that they might switch preferences compared to 22% for Haley. 82% of GOP voters said that they approved of Trump's performance as president, while 60% were satisfied with Haley's tenure as governor. A majority, 75%, said that Haley, being from South Carolina, makes no difference in their choice of candidates, with 20% saying that they were more likely to vote for the former governor as a result, and 5% saying they were less likely to vote for her because she had been governor. While nearly half of GOP voters reportedly identified themselves as members of Trump's MAGA movement, 75% said that Haley was not part of the movement. Just 23% of Trump voters said that the former president's ongoing legal troubles were a valid reason to consider Governor Haley. Trump also was viewed by South Carolina Republicans as more likely to be able to defeat Joe Biden in November, despite other polls that have somewhat consistently shown that Haley would do quite well in a head-to-head advantage or matchup with Biden when compared to Trump. And that's one of the polls that she loves to cite out on the stump. In the CBS News poll, 55% of GOP voters insisted that Trump would definitely beat Biden in the general election, with 33% saying the same for Ms. Haley. Other polls have been similarly encouraging for former President Trump. An average of recent polls compiled by Real Clear Politics has Trump leading Haley in South Carolina by 30.7 points, 30.7 percentage points. Boy, that's embarrassing if you're a former governor and you can't win your own state. Haley still claims she's going to press on to Super Tuesday. The gap is even wider, we're told, in other states. Trump holds an average edge of 74.3% to 18% over Haley in national polling for the Republican nomination. Haley, who, of course, served as Trump's U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, has vowed that she's going to keep going regardless of what the polls show. During a Fox News interview earlier this month, Haley argued that she did not have to win South Carolina insisting that her goal was to, quote, continue to show that we're strong. Continue to show that we're strong. How do you do that if you lose your own state by 30 points? That doesn't show that you're strong. This latest poll was released on Monday, actually, made up of 1,483 registered South Carolina voters. Meanwhile, the Daily Caller says an overwhelming majority of Americans believe that Joe Biden is too old to serve another term following the release of this special counsel report that described him as a well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory. This latest poll on Biden's age is consistent with previous polls, but I think it has solidified after special counsel Robert Hur's report declined to pursue criminal charges, of course, but also is a real problem because he questioned specifically Joe Biden's mental capacity. An ABC News Ipsos survey found that 86% of Americans, when asked, say that Biden is too old ahead of the 2024 election, compared to 62% who have said the same thing about former President Donald Trump. Biden is already the oldest president in U.S. history. He'd be 86 years old by the end of a potential second term. The former president, Donald Trump, 77. Only 3% of Americans view only Trump as too old for another term compared to 27% who said the same about Joe Biden. Most Americans view both men as too old for re-election at 59%, and 11% think that either were, according to the poll. Hur's report found that Joe Biden willfully withheld classified documents from his time as vice president related to important national security matters. The special counsel recalled moments where Biden failed to remember when his son Beau passed away, as well as the duration of his vice presidency. The report read, based on our direct interactions with and observances of him, he is someone for whom many jurors will want to identify reasonable doubt. It would be difficult to convince a jury that they should convict him, by then a former president, well into his 80s, of a serious felony that requires a mental state of willfulness. And as you remember, last week, immediately after the report was released, Joe Biden held a press conference that was just a disaster. He mixed up leaders of Mexico and Egypt, contradicted key components of the special counsel's findings, and I'm sure that someone in the White House is regretting that they scheduled that news conference for him. The White House pointed the Daily Caller News Foundation toward a Saturday memo, though, which listed several individuals who have refuted concerns of Biden's age and mental fitness, including the father of freed Hamas hostage, Liat Atzili, former chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Mark Milley, former House Republican Speaker Kevin McCarthy, and GOP Senator Mitt Romney of Utah. Did you hear about Kevin McCarthy being in D.C. this week? Rumored that he may run for office again? I would suggest if he is, he might not want to be defending Joe Biden's mental state. The memo reads, President Biden's experience, character, and drive have made him the most successful president in modern history, getting the country back on its feet after inheriting a nation in crisis and going on to achieve goals that eluded his predecessors for decades. Who are they talking about? Are they talking about Joe Biden, the same Joe Biden that you and I know? It goes on to say, and this undeniable record speaks to why it's no surprise that Republican officials continued their desperate and inadvertently self-undermining age attacks after many years of failure. They're afraid of Joe Biden. Sure. I wonder if the people, whoever wrote this statement, has seen the poll showing that 86% of Americans think Joe Biden's too old. The president is currently trailing Donald Trump, who is the clear front runner for the GOP nomination, as we discussed a minute ago, and he leads Joe Biden, according to Real Clear Politics average, by about 2 points. Trump is also leading Biden in several crucial battleground states, Arizona, Nevada, Michigan, and our friends in Georgia. On the Furman Ford text line today, Christy says, so if Biden can't be charged for the documents because he's old and can't remember, Does that give him free rein to do whatever he wants or his handlers want, and he never has to be held responsible for it? Ridiculous. Yes, it is ridiculous, Christy. Thank you for your note on the Furman Ford text line. Faye says, Joey, I like our governor, but don't understand his fetish with electric vehicles. Heard lots of electric buses are headed our way. Some bus routes cover many miles. Don't see how that's going to work. And speaking of schools, Ellen Weaver needs to be addressing issues I'm hearing about. Don't ever see her on the local news. What issues, Faye? We'll send those down to Superintendent of Education Weaver and get some answers from her for you. Fran in Simpsonville writes, Joey, thank you for the show today. You're a true patriot, and we're grateful for your voice. Thank you, Fran. That's very kind of you. I appreciate those kind remarks. Jeff, I love the God Shot. I listened to Jack Graham's Bible in a year. Jeff's referencing something that I included in yesterday's podcast. If you missed it, go back and listen. It's called God Shot, which is the title of a book written by Tara Lee Cobble. She's the host of one of the most popular podcasts. It's called the Bible Recap Podcast. And she has written this book, The God Shot. And it's just little quick stories from the Bible. Bonnie on the Furman Ford text line says, love the show. God Shot daily would be great. I'm doing her read through the Bible, and it's wonderful. Thank you, Bonnie. I appreciate that. You know, I often read a text of encouragement each day. And I got a great response yesterday from the short little God Shot that I shared with you. Many of you liked the idea because I asked you, is this something that you would like? And this started because of a texter who has been texting me literally for years, a very encouraging message every day. This texter, and I do not know who it is, do not know if it's a he or a she, but for years now, the texter has sent me a Bible verse or just a word of encouragement. And most days I share that with you. I haven't received them in the past week or so, and it concerned me. So I text the person. Again, I don't know who it is. They've never told me their name, but I can obviously text back to them. I just have a phone number. So I text back and said, hey, I've missed your text of encouragement. Hope you're okay. Got a response. Said, I've been in ICU and receiving critical care this past week. I hope to be back soon. Now, again, I don't know this person, but let me ask you right now to say a prayer of healing that our friend who has been encouraging all of us for a long time now, let's all pause right now and pray for total healing for whoever this person is. And if you're listening, and I hope you are, hope you know that you got a lot of people out there praying for you. I also received a suggestion that rather than calling it God Shot, that maybe we call it a God Truth, since this is just a truth that we, and it makes sense, doesn't it? So what do you think? Should we call it our God Truth of the day? Love to get your feedback. 864-477-5639. Send me a quick note on the Furman Ford text line. Should that be the name of our new little feature here? The God Truth? Today's scripture from Matthew 6:26 and 27. Look at the birds of the air. They never sow, nor reap, nor gather into barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not of more value than they? And of which of you, by being anxious, can add a single hour to his span of life? This is referencing when Jesus preaches the Sermon on the Mount. And, you know, I've been to Israel a number of times. I've been blessed to be able to go and to see these areas that Jesus walked. And, boy, will it change your life. You know, I was so sad when we had to cancel our trip to Israel back this past year because of the war. But I've seen some of these places. And his, if you listen and you read some of the commentary, they speculate that Jesus was probably talking to an audience that was filled with farmers and fishermen and shepherds. So he uses imagery that they can easily understand. He references the birds. He says that they live a good life with what God provides for them. And if God is attentive to even the birds, then how much more attention does he pay to his children? We're given to anxiety when we forget that God is attentive and active in our lives, don't we? He doesn't want us to be anxious. This is a common theme throughout Scripture. In fact, 366 times in Scripture, God tells us not to be afraid. Once for every day of the year. Think about that. 366 times it's mentioned not to be afraid. So every single day, he's telling us, don't be afraid. I think it's interesting that God never gives that counsel to his enemies. He only gives it to his children. Why? Because fathers provide their own children with counsel and with guidance. God is our Father, and he provides for us every single day. That's our God Truth for today. Love to get your comments on the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. From the email inbox, my friend Bob from Little Rock. Bob first texted me saying, thank you, Joey, for standing so strong with Jesus. I like the scripture focus. Then he emailed me. He said, Joey, I want to send a conversation topic for your podcast. Not sure if it's right for you, but you asked for any topics to discuss. If not, absolutely no worries. He said Coca-Cola. And he asked the question, does Coca-Cola, whether it's bottles, cans, or 2 liters, go flat before you finish drinking it? And have they reduced the carbonated water as part of their formula? He said, I think that this will take Coke experts to decide the question. Now, I preferred Coca-Cola all my life, but these days, when I open a can, I can't finish it before the last 10% goes flat. I'm not a Coke expert, and I might be imagining it, so can an expert put truth to this issue? I'm not an expert either, but hey, if I have any chemist out there who maybe has done some analysis of the Coke formula, is this possible? And then he tells me another story. He said when he was in his 30s, a senior manager from a major toothpaste company came to work with our management team. He said he told us an incredible story about facing a very high sales target for their toothpaste brand. Here's what they came up with. Here was their solution. Slightly increase the size of the nozzle opening for each tube. Think about it. You squeeze the tube and now more comes out. More is used per brush, and of course you'll need to buy additional product throughout the year. The bottom line was the company not only hit their sales targets, they exceeded it. No one ever figured it out. Interesting, Bob. He says, so has Coca-Cola lowered the amount of carbonated water? If so, the last portion of the can would taste flat compared to the first sip. You would then throw this can away and open a new one. Now you're buying more product without shrinkflation. Just asking for a friend, aren't you, Bob? Appreciate that. Your comments are welcome on the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-5639. Former NFL star receiver Brandon Marshall claimed on his podcast yesterday that Taylor Swift had Kanye West kicked out of the Super Bowl. Now, do you remember the whole saga between Taylor Swift and Kanye West back when she was a young rising star? I'll tell you all about this in just a moment. First, let me talk with you about appliances. Did you get up this morning, make your coffee, you go over to the refrigerator, open it for your cream, and the light didn't come on? That's a bad sign. I did that last week. And, of course, I text Discounted Appliance Warehouse, and they quickly sent Johnny and his team out, and Johnny solved the problem. It was just a light out in the freezer that had caused some of the other lights to not work as well. Johnny fixed it real quick. And that's the kind of service you'll get after the sale at Discounted Appliance Warehouse. First off, though, they're going to sell you the most affordable and the best appliances for you and your family. They have an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. They have nearly perfect reviews on Google, and the team at Discounted Appliance Warehouse, they have the knowledge that you need to have the confidence that you're going to make the right purchase. They'll show you around the warehouse. They have over 11,000 square feet packed slam full of appliances waiting for you. Discounted Appliance Warehouse is worth the short drive to Pickens. Find them online at dawpickens.com, dawpickens.com. So has Taylor Swift introduced a little of the Hollywood drama to the NFL? According to former NFL receiver Brandon Marshall, he said that on his podcast that Kanye was on a quest to buy tickets right in front of Taylor Swift's box so that every time the cameras cut to Swift, he would be in the camera shot. But according to Marshall's claim, Swift caught wind of it and made some calls and put the kibosh on Kanye's big plans.
Kanye West pulls up to Vegas. Kanye West buys a ticket right in front of Katy Perry's booth. So anytime they were going
They got their name wrong here initially.
Perry, Kanye's face was going to be there.
Did you say in front of Taylor's booth or in front of Katy Perry's booth?
Oh, my bad. In front of Taylor Swift's booth.
Oh.
He had a mask on with his logo on the mask, right? Typical Kanye. Taylor Swift gets pissed off. She boom makes a call or two. Everybody's involved. He gets kicked out the stadium.
Oh, this is hot.
But Kanye,
this
is hot tea.
Wow. Does Taylor Swift really have this much pull? I guess the first lady of the NFL can probably do whatever she wants, can't she? If true, and according to the Daily Caller, who's not too certain about the claim, the Daily Caller says it's a big if. Swift may finally have gotten her revenge for the infamous "I'm going to let you finish" incident where Kanye interrupted her on stage during the 2009 Grammy Awards to tell her the award she had just won should have gone to Beyonce. You remember that? I had forgotten about it, and just by coincidence, Peg and I happened to be channel surfing the other night and ran across the documentary on Taylor Swift called Americana. And it showed this very awkward moment. I mean, she was a young girl then, just a rising star. And she had just won the Grammy. And Kanye, the big doofus that he is, he goes up he's on the stage and tells her she doesn't deserve the award. And Beyonce's sitting there in front of her, and that it should have gone to Beyonce. And you could tell this was before she got her legs. This was before she was so outspoken. And she stood there. She didn't know what to say. Nobody knew what to say. There was this awkward moment of silence. Taylor Swift, I think, probably has a long memory. Again, if we take Marshall's claims serious, and the Daily Caller says we should probably take him with a grain of salt, but how hilarious would it have been if Swift had never caught wind and Kanye's actually popping up in front of her every time CBS goes to her suite, which they did often. According to Mr. Marshall, Kanye had planned to pull the stunt in a mask with his logo on it. And imagine CBS didn't even notice that it was him until halfway through, and he was going to pull the mask off and do the big reveal. Wonder what Jim Nantz and Tony Romo how they would have handled the situation as broadcasters. According to the Daily Caller, they reached out to representatives for Swift, West, and Marshall, and neither or none of them responded. That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition Studio. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. Hey, if you haven't joined my mailing list, what are you waiting for? Go to joeyhudson.com, click on the Connect with Joey button so that you'll receive our emails with the most up-to-date news. Also, find me on YouTube. Go back and watch that segment I mentioned earlier of when I guest host for Gallagher on Monday, and some of the comments I had about Mayorkas and our, quote, secure border. Just go to YouTube, search for Joey Hudson. You'll find my channel, and you can see that segment. Appreciate you spending a few minutes of your day with me, because I know you have choices. Keep your comments coming via the Furman Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. Keep your emails coming as well. I appreciate the ones like Bob sent me. Just send them to Joey at joeyhudson.com. They come right to my inbox. Until tomorrow, remember, folks, God's got this. He's still in control.